Good evening and welcome to this special edition of the Compassionate Friends webinar, The Nation Mourns and Together We Heal, the Sandy Hook Tragedy. Last Friday, December 14th, a gunman made his way into the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, and shot 20 children and 6 adults before turning the gun on himself. We grieve as a nation when something like this happens, and we find as bereaved parents and family members that we are revisiting our own grief in the wake of this horrific tragedy. I'm Pat Loder, the Executive Director of the Compassionate Friends, and I'm being joined this evening by Dr. Gloria Horsley and Dr. Heidi Horsley from the Open to Hope Foundation, who are experts on grief and loss. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you. It's great to be on, Pat.
Welcome, Heidi.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for having us on tonight.
Oh, thanks for being here.
It's certainly a sad time for us to be on, but we so much appreciate the Compassionate Friends and the opportunity that we have to come and be together as a Compassionate Friends family. And it's so wonderful to know that as time goes on, we'll have this family with us. So tonight, Heidi and I wanted to bring a message of hope to people out there in the community, and we hope that you'll find some things here that will be helpful and useful for you. We're going to start out with looking at self-care, then we're going to move on with Heidi talking about children, and then we're going to move on beyond that to talking about fears of children returning to school, and then we will be talking about reaching out. And what we'd like to do on this is we'd like you to participate by giving, by texting in questions or comments that Pat will bring up. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it in segments. I'm going to do self-care. And then if you've got some questions, please text them. And then Heidi will be talking about children. So we know that you're out there with a lot of special concerns, and we hope we'll be able to help you with those concerns. So one of the things that we wanted to start with, Pat and Heidi, and I hope you guys will chime in on this, is to be aware of grief hooks and reminders. Wow, for myself, I know that the reminders of my son's death were huge during this time. How about you, Pat? And Heidi, are you guys on there with me?
I'm here. I don't know, Pat.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was had a problem with my speaker for a moment, but yes, you're absolutely right, Gloria. The events of this last week have really hit home, and I have revisited my grief very, very much so in the last week.
And even though it's been years for all of us, wow, it really comes up for you, and I never know when it's going to hit me. How about you, Heidi, as a sibling?
Absolutely, because, you know, Scott and Matthew died traumatically. I mean, they died in a sudden death in a pretty horrific car accident, and so it does bring out memories. And, you know, the media can be very graphic. And when they talk in graphic terms, I get flashbacks of my own loss. So, you know, like you said, Mom, we never know when it's going to happen, which is difficult because sometimes we don't have control over when we're going to hear things and when we're going to read things.
Right, and some of the things people said in the media I found really aggravating because, you know, you could tell they'd never had a child die. I mean, already talking about growing experiences from this or, you know, talking about other things. I don't know, was there anything that bothered you, Pat?
I hate the word closure, and how many times have we heard that in the last week? There is no closure for something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And our friend Bob Niemeyer always says closure is for bank accounts, not love accounts.
Ah, that's a good way to put it.
Right. So let's move on to some self-care tips. Be aware of the grief hooks and reminders. We were just talking about that. One of the great things we can do is exercise, walk, journal, talk with other people. Pat, have you got any comments on any of those things?
Yeah, I agree. There's one thing that I wish that I would have done is journaling when I first started my grief journey, and you can really see how far you've come when you do something like that.
Yeah, and I was thinking about now, you know, we could, if it's bothering us, things that are coming up, we can certainly journal and look at them right now. and how they remind us, particularly for you folks out there who've got a new loss. I mean, you may be weeks out of your own loss, and here, this is all coming up. It's, depending on where you are in the grieving process, it can be very difficult. Heidi, have you got any comments on exercise?
I just think sometimes stretching is helpful. I mean, it sounds really minor, but it kind of shifts your energy because, when we're grieving, we hold a lot in our gut and in our neck and in our bodies. We hold a lot more than we think. And, the thing about a loss is it's an assault to your system. It really is.
Yeah,
so,
there's a lot of physical going on, a lot of brain stuff. I was just reading a Deepak Chopra article today about the brain changes that take place. The next thing is drink water and eat healthy foods. I mean, that may seem minor, drink water, but, it's an important aspect of what we do. Pat, have you got any ideas on food or drinking water? That drinking is a whole other issue because I think you do have to be careful about that.
Yes, absolutely. But the drinking of water, absolutely. It's I'm glad that you put something like that in, to eat healthy, drink lots of water. I remember when I was newly bereaved, if somebody told me to sit down, I sat down. If somebody told me to eat, I ate. But otherwise, I just was too numb to think of these things myself. So I think that the people around us also have to be aware that we're so numb when we're newly bereaved that that we don't think for ourselves, that we don't think to eat healthy foods or food at all, or to drink water.
Or maybe just grab a brownie or something that somebody brought over, so take care of
Well, and the thing about water is we're crying a lot, so we're losing a lot of water.
Oh, good
So,
point.
yes, to hydrate ourselves. And the other thing that's ironic is everybody's bringing this amazing food at a time in our lives where we're the least interested in eating. I love that they're bringing it, but you're just looking at it going, gosh, I wish I wanted to eat this, and I don't.
Right. And then later on you might end up freezing it and eating a little more of it than you want. I don't know. So getting on with self-care, I think this next one is really important, which is the gift of others. Give others the gift of helping you. This is really important. I have my sister-in-law has always been so giving to everyone, and my brother-in-law died last year, and she really has a hard time accepting help from other people because she's such a giving person and such a good person. So, Heidi, you were commenting on that too when you read that, said something about it.
I love the idea. Okay, so if you're a giving person, which many of us are, I love the idea of thinking, when you let someone help you, you're giving them a gift. So
Absolutely.
Think of it that way.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Heidi. There are so many people that want to do something for us, anything for us when we're bereaved, and allowing them to help us in some manner, I really, really think is a gift to them as well as to ourselves.
Well, we were thinking about some of the things that you might do during this holiday season to commemorate your loved one, because kind of focusing on them and being able to compartmentalize it a little bit, particularly those of us that are a little further down the road. So plan a memory ritual. How do you want to talk about giving a toast and maybe how to talk about lighting the candle?
Sure, I'll talk about something. I want to say something up front. A lot of people in the media have said, in recognition of all these kids that died and a way to honor all these people that have died, these 26 people, we should turn off our Christmas lights, turn off our menorahs, get rid of all of our holiday things. And I want to say that I feel like in order to pay tribute to all these wonderful children, we should turn everything on. We should turn everything on as a way to honor and pay tribute to the lives that were lost.
I like that, Heidi. And also, you talk about siblings. They need those things in their lives. They need the consistency, don't they, of having the holiday and those kinds
Absolutely. I just got off the phone with a reporter who said, shouldn't we not have these holidays? And I said, but, the living children will feel like they're being punished in some way. They won't understand this concept that we're not having the holidays. So I said, incorporate those that have died, like you said, Mom, into our rituals. I mean, one thing I love is when people get a wreath and they decorate it with things that the person that died loved. Like I would put a Twix bar on it, a Twix bar for Scott, his favorite candy bar. I would put a New York Jets bulb on it because he was a Jets fan. You know, do those kind of things to memorialize that person.
Right. And you want to talk about giving a toast, because I like that.
The one thing I want to say about a toast is, were you talking to me, Mom? I think you were.
Yeah.
Anyway, the toast is when you give a toast to a child that has died. I love that at the holidays. You can just say, "This is for Scott. We really miss him." The
Or
only
have
thing
a family member do it too if you can't do it.
Yeah, have somebody else do it, exactly, if you can't do it. The one thing I want to say, though, is the most amazing toast I've ever heard is one that goes like this. This is to Scott. We miss him, and we wish he was here, and this is also to my other 3 daughters that are here.
I love
So
that.
include the whole family is what I'm saying, all the children.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Pat, do you want to talk about lighting a candle? Because, you know, the Compassionate Friends candle lighting was so amazing this year.
Yeah, it is always so amazing. It's the one day a year that we can remember and honor our children who have died, and it's the second Sunday of December, and everyone lights a candle at 7 p.m. no matter where you are, or light it at any time during that day. But you know you're not alone in your grief, and that other people around the world are also remembering their loved ones, and as well as you. So it really is a very, very special day.
You know what I was thinking about, Pat? I was thinking maybe just for the people of us that are on this call today, or maybe it wants to get passed around, you know, on the 25th at 7 o'clock, we could all light a candle.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
And,
absolutely.
And the people I will do it, so people out there that are on this webinar, if you want to do it, you'll be lighting a candle with me. So.
Yeah, and I would like to mention here while we're talking about rituals that we will have on our website tomorrow a memory book or a tribute book for those families or the children that died in Newtown. And if you want to leave a message, you certainly can do so, and we will be presenting it to the town after some time has gone by.
Oh, what a great idea. That's wonderful. I certainly will be on there. So, Heidi, why don't you say the next tip? Oh, maybe I'll say what it is, because there it is. You can say it. It's up.
Talking to your children?
No, considering taking a news break.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see talking to your children up, but I wasn't sure that I was going to talk about taking a news break.
Yeah.
Yes, we're being inundated.
Because you've worked with those 9/11 families.
Absolutely.
And you know how
Absolutely. I worked with 9/11 families for 10 years here in New York City, and the thing about it, as you all know, the Sandy Hook tragedy is playing over and over and over. We are being inundated, even to the point where we get in a cab here in New York, and it's on the news feed in the back seat. So what do I want to say about that? We need to take a break as adults from that because it creates a lot of anxiety in our lives, and we need to make sure that children are not exposed to that, because what happens is when children keep seeing the shootings and hearing about it, they think it's all over the country in many schools. They don't realize they're showing the same event over and over and over. Mm-hmm. So it creates an incredible amount of anxiety in children if they are exposed to that kind of footage.
Right. Now, Pat, have we got anybody asking questions yet?
We do, and we have a couple people asking the same question, and it has to do with feeling like their child's death has been minimized in comparison to the lives of the children in Connecticut. This person's, well, as I said, we've had a couple of questions like this, but in the one I'm reading right now, the person's son had only died just a few months ago.
You know, this is very interesting because I went to church on Sunday, and there's a very sweet girl there whose name is Isabel, and her sister Emily died about, Heidi, what, 6 months ago or something, mm-hmm. Maybe about 6 months ago. And I saw Emily, and I said, Emily, how are you? And she said, you know what, I feel like everybody's forgotten. I said, Isabel, I'm sorry. She said, I feel like everyone's forgotten Emily. And I felt so sad. And I saw a couple of her friends, and I said, you know, all you have to do is mention Emily and say, we miss her, I'm thinking about you. That's all it takes. It is difficult, and especially with siblings, people, seem to move on and that kind of thing, and this big event has happened. And you know what? Today I noticed that the news is not even talking about that, so they've now dropped, there's not as much news, and they'll go on to the next news event. I think that that's a common feeling. What do you think, Pat?
I agree. Absolutely. It is what happens at this point.
Yeah, how about you, Heidi?
I do want to say something, though, given that I've been working with 9/11 for 10 years, I worked with 9/11 for 10 years, and like this person said, that's a good point. This is the worst school shooting in history, and 9/11 was the hugest terrorist attack and the only one we've ever had. So, yes, this is going to gain international, people are going to look at it internationally, and it's going to have a lot of media, and people are going to be talking about it forever. But I want to say something about that. While it's frustrating because we have siblings and children that have died that no one talks about in the media, the other piece is, or that may have been forgotten, we think, the other piece is this is an opportunity to to show the world how to grieve and not make it so taboo. And I feel like 9/11 kind of did that. There was a shift in the country, and we started talking more openly and saying, we don't have closure. We don't get over it. We learn to live with it. We started educating those that had not had a loss about what it is like to have a loss. And that is the one thing that can come out of this. We that have been there can educate the world about what to do and what not to do.
That's a good point, and letting people know what you need. And I love that you've asked those questions because that means you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about how you want to deal with loss and how you want to help people with their other losses and not to minimize it. One of the things I had to think about a little bit was, there were adults that died. There were children that lost their parents in this also, and there were also husbands who lost their wives. So it's just the way we compartmentalize and think of it is pretty interesting.
And Mom, you said something too that I think is important for this caller because I really do understand where she's coming from. We need to teach people how to be good grief support. So in other words, like you said, go on to Facebook and say, you know what, I missed Scott today, or I thought of my brother today, and he lives forever in my heart. Go on to places and say that, or bring it up with friends. We need to keep those people in the forefront. And let people know that, hey, you can talk about the person that we've lost in front of us. We like it. You don't have to be worried that, that we don't want to hear their names. We want to hear their names. Sometimes we have to kind of educate people.
And it's okay if I cry, and I'll come back, and it's okay if I leave the table, don't come and get me, and, I'm going to be okay, but I am going to grieve. So, it is tough because people do want us to be like we were, especially during the holidays. So let's move on. Is there one more question, Pat, we want to take?
Yeah, let's talk about for a minute that there's a lot of anxiety right now, and everyone wants to do something for this school, this town, for these families. What do you suggest when there's such a need to do something?
I suggest that you do it in your own neighborhood. Like if
That's
there's
excellent.
Who had a loss, tell them that you are thinking about their child or their spouse. Do it in your own neighborhood. Think about the power of everybody in the United States, 12 million people, helping their neighbor who's had a loss. And, I mean, the power of that is incredible.
I like that idea, Gloria. Very nice.
I love that. And I'll tell you what else we can do is, I think I said one day, I was driving out of New York, and I was on the West Side Highway, and I get to the toll booth, and the guy says to me, the guy in front of you paid your toll in honor of his daughter. And so, we can do little things like that just to honor the person that we love. Random acts of kindness kind of thing.
Right. Kind of sending a wave of that kind of light across the United States would be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So let's move on to talking to children. Heidi, do you want to take this?
Sure. Pat brought this up, and I think it is so important, the idea of the anxiety, which is being felt everywhere in this country right now. We have kids, and we get concerned, oh, my gosh, this happened. How safe are our children, et cetera. And also, everybody, I assume that most people on this webinar have had children die or siblings die.
Or
So to
grandchildren.
see this, pardon me?
Or grandchildren.
Or grandchildren, right. So I guess one of the things I would say is, before you talk to your children, check in with yourself and assess your own anxiety. Because if you go to your children and you're highly anxious, they are going to look at you as a role model for how safe their world is. And they are going to become highly anxious. So I would really check in with myself. I don't know. What do you both think about that?
Yeah, I agree. We kind of model for our children, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they want it to be safe. They want mom and dad to be okay. But the reality is there is a change and they know it. So if you can talk to somebody else before you talk to them, I think if you're feeling really anxious, it's a good thing to do.
I get the next thing I would say is be direct, honest, and age appropriate when you're sharing information. So although you don't want to lie to children, you want to be age appropriate. You know, I just heard something today which really disturbed me. A friend of mine called me and said, Heidi, my 7-year-old went to school, and the teacher told the children in horrific detail how these children were murdered. And they went on to describe it in detail. And, you know, that kind of detail is very traumatizing for small children. So I don't think that it needs to be to that extent. So remember how old your children are and, you know, share age appropriately this information. And the other piece is, people say, how much do I say, etc. Allow children's questions to guide you. What are they asking? You know, and if they're not asking for certain things, don't just give them that information. Pat and Mom, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think there's an old joke about a little kid asking his mom, where was I born, and his mother gives him all the facts of life, and the kid looks at her and says, I just wanted to know what hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to what they're asking you. Yeah.
Because you don't, you know, whenever I see kids that have generalized anxiety disorders in my practice, there's usually a parent that has generalized anxiety. So just to remember that children are looking at you to figure out how safe it is and how they respond, etc. We are the role models.
I want to say that's in terms of this tragedy. Now, if you've had a death of a child, you know, or a spouse, I mean, a death of a child or a grandchild or a sibling, you're going to have to be honest about your own emotions too. And I think the anxiety over the event that happened at Sandy Hook is a little different than your own personal grief. So your own personal grief, you know, you do cry in front of your children. You do get upset, that kind of thing. You try not to get too upset, but, you know, we are human. And
well, Mom, you're making a good point. I mean, sometimes we can't control our anxiety or our emotions, and all of a sudden they might overwhelm us. So when those times happen, like you said, we're human. We need to just look at our kids and say, I'm feeling really anxious right now, or I'm feeling really upset, but I'm going to be okay eventually, and it's going to be okay, and it's nothing you've done, and Mommy will be okay in a few minutes. So just to reassure them again.
Mm-hmm. Heidi, when you said age appropriate, and you talked about little, you know, younger children, what about teenagers? How do you feel about how much you should talk to your teenagers?
Well, this is a really good question, and I will tell you. My son was with his, you know, playing with his friends on some video game, and they were talking about this event. So how I feel is, and he's 14. We really do need to tell our teenagers probably a lot of the information, because they're going to hear it from their peers, their friends. Teens are going to talk about it, and I would rather that I can talk first to Alexander so that I can say to him, do you have any questions? And, you know, but yeah, it's a tricky thing. I mean, Pat, you've had a couple teenagers, and I know, Mom, you've had 4 teenagers. So what are your thoughts on how much to tell teens?
I think it's a lot like what Gloria brought up a little bit earlier when she said, listen to what they're asking you. Sometimes they just want to know a little bit about it, but when you go into graphic detail, I know with my teenagers, if they ask me a question, I answer it very honestly, but if they want to know more, they'll ask more, and I'm happy then to share more. But I let them be the guide there.
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
I like that, and I've also noticed with teens, when they change the subject mid-sentence, it's because they have had enough information.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing. We don't want to say to them, wait, pay attention, I'm trying to talk to you about what happened. They're protecting themselves so that they don't become completely overwhelmed. So that's our cue that they're done with the conversation. They need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing about teens are if you're concerned that they're not talking about it, we always say that the best way to get teens to talk is go play basketball with them or do a game with them that they like or just hang out with them or whatever. You know, they may just want to be with you and may not want to get into all this.
Right, talking shoulder to shoulder instead of eye to eye.
Yeah, especially with your boys.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Hudson.
Okay, so let's see. Talking to the children. Yes, talking to children continued. So this is really difficult for parents to wrap their arms around. Reassuring our kids to the extent possible that it is still a safe world. In other words, this did happen at Sandy Hook, and it was a horrific thing, and kids were killed in a school, but it's very rare. Most children will never be killed in a school. Schools are safe places. So kind of reassuring kids of that so that because what happens if we don't reassure them, they're going to have a lot of difficulty concentrating. And you're going to see all sorts of problems because they're going to be so stressed out. So trying to reassure them that it's still safe. This is tough, though, because we can't say 100%. I don't know, Pat and Mom, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
You know, there are thousands of, I don't know how many, probably 1 million kids that go to school every day, and this doesn't happen. So I think we have to work with them on the school is okay. And people are talking now about having guns at school and all that. Well, I live in California, and you know what? The whole campuses are open. You go to a building that has 100 doors going into different classrooms in the high school here in Palo Alto. I was talking to my grandchildren about it. And they can have somebody wander around, but it's not monitored at all and buzzing people in. So making every school in the United States safe is just not a possibility. You have to believe that it's going to be a safe world and have some kind of faith and try to maintain some kind of courage about your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing I've got to say, too, is Sandy Hook had an amazing plan in place, and a lockdown plan, which schools across America do, and that lockdown plan is the reason that so many lives were saved. It was one of the reasons, because these teachers, they knew exactly what to do, and the children knew exactly what to do. The children were being very, very quiet, even the little ones. So they knew to go in and lock the doors and whatever. They have all these plans in place. They knew exactly to go to the fire station. I mean, they knew what to do, and just the kids know that. Kids are, my kids at school, and we live in Midtown Manhattan, they have practiced. In the event that anything ever happens. So I think that is a great thing. There are things in place, and like you said, Mom, statistically speaking, it's very, very rare, and we have to keep that in mind, because when an event like this happens and it gets this kind of press and this kind of coverage, we start to think, oh my gosh, schools aren't safe.
You're less safe walking across the street or getting into a car.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that you have to try to tone that down a little bit if you can with the kids.
Okay, so one thing you see with children a lot, and you may have seen it with your kids right now, is there's regression. So in other words, kids may become clingy. They may not want you to leave. They may start to act out. They may bedwet when they haven't for a long time, and that's normal. That is completely normal after a trauma. So eventually they will return back to the way they used to be, but just have patience with them and realize and be non-judgmental. They just need a lot of love right now. They need to be loved on by you, and they may even need you to take longer when you transition them. When you bring them to school, they may need you to stay longer. So just to keep that in mind.
I love, Heidi, that you just said love on him, because Daryl Scott, whose daughter Rachel was killed at Columbine, was the one that told us that. We said, what do you do with your kid when Craig, his son who was there, we said, what do you do when Craig has problems about Columbine? And he says, I just love on him.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mom, because Craig absolutely fell apart for a year, understandably so, when he watched, his classmates being murdered and his sister. He was a mess, and that was such great parent advice. Daryl said, I just loved on him and loved on him, and I said, I'm here for you. We're a family. We're going to get through this. We are a team, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it together. And they did.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's see. The next thing is discuss common grief responses with kids. So in other words, tell them it's normal to feel sad or angry or anxious, difficulty concentrating and sitting still. If you see your kids bouncing off the walls all of a sudden right now, that's because of what's happened. Children don't have the language for it. So they might start acting out and misbehaving because there's a lot of anxiety around what happened. Pat, do you have any comments on that, or Gloria?
No, I think, they're good points.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So do we have any more questions, Pat?
Yes, there's a good point that somebody brought up is that they buy a gift for their son, wrap it beautifully, and give it to a child in need as a gift in memory of their son, which I thought was a wonderful thing to bring up. That's a nice way to remember your child and yet help somebody else, as you mentioned, Gloria.
Yeah.
I love that, Pat, because if we are of service, and this is a little further down the road, oftentimes when we start being of service to others, we really begin to heal. And I know initially that is hard. Initially, you just have to let other people serve you, and that's being of service. Mm-hmm. But eventually, doing something like that really shifts your energy, and it makes you feel better.
Absolutely. Here's somebody who says they're having anxiety and fear about losing the surviving child now. Overprotection, lots of worrying about leaving them at school, sometimes someone breaking into the house, etc. I had the same problem. I'm sure you did too, Gloria.
Absolutely. I remember I was, a kid came over, Heather, my teenager at the time, went out to a party, and one of Scott's friends came over. He could see I was very anxious because she was gone. And he said, do you want me to go find her? And I said, yes. So he went out and found her, and this is pre-cell phones, and told me she was fine. That anxiety that we have is normal, our anxiety for our other children, and it has to be contained. It goes on for a while. So, and then having these events, again, this is a trigger, comes up again, and this trigger makes you fearful about the kids going to school, that kind of thing. You really have to look at what's going on for you, that it's not that this event does re-trigger it for you, and you do become more cautious with your other kids.
I agree. This
Absolutely.
is a trigger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're saying it's normal, because and like Pat said and like you said, it's normal to have anxiety, and all of a sudden you look at your whole world is unsafe, and oh my gosh, if one child died, could another and another. So these are all very, very normal responses. So then, when we know we're at this point, we need to go back to our self-care tips and say, how can I, knowing that this is a normal part of the grief process and feeling like it's overwhelming right now, what can I do at this point to just lessen the anxiety a little bit? And going back to our self-care.
Like going for a walk and drinking water and talking to friends and journaling, and those are the things that you need to go back to when you start finding yourself being overly anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's why I love Compassionate Friends. Because you can go there and you can vent and you can talk about your anxiety, and other people can say, I have that, I get that. And you can kind of leave it in the room and then leave that anxiety, or at least some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
Absolutely.
I agree. It's a great place where you're able to talk out some of those things that are bothering you where your friends and family don't understand that you still have this anxiety response to the death of your child.
And I'm just going to put in a quick plug for the national conference in Boston in July, because some people I know who are hearing this don't have a chapter in their neighborhood. And I also would suggest to you, if you don't, that you get a hold of your local hospital, or you go your hospice or whatever, and find out if there are groups around that you can go to, because the groups are really powerful. But hopefully you've got a Compassionate Friends one, and if you're 18 months out, maybe you'll open one in your own neighborhood and get in touch with Compassionate Friends. Let's move on to fears of returning to school, because we've got a few more things to do before we want to move along on this webinar so we can take more questions. I'll talk about fears of returning to school, and I think we're going to kind of run through this first sheet we've got pretty fast, Pat. So I'm going to just read them all, and then we can talk about them as a group. Maintain familiar routines and structures when the kids are returning to school. And you know, by the way, that your kids are going to be taking a break now for the holidays. So this anxiety about what happened at Sandy Hook School could come back when they go back to school for you and them. So I think it's important for you to think about the tips we're going to give you. Maintain a familiar routine and a structure. Verbally walk your child through the school day. So think about that when they go back. You're going to, what's your day? You've been out of school. You're going back after the holidays. Tell me about your day. Let them walk you through the entire day. It doesn't even hurt to have teenagers do that. Talk about how and why the school may be more secure. Now, as I said, in California, it's not going to be as much as it might be in schools. It can be self-contained, or Arizona, but you know, take a look at that. So,
I want to say something about those tips. Yes, about the more security.
Those tips and discuss them as a group, and then we'll move on to the next one. If we can get back, who knows, on the internet.
The verbally walk your child through the school day. I've got another idea.
Okay.
If it's a smaller child, take toys and walk them through the school day with play. In other words, take little miniature toys and set up a school. Set up a school, and then you might be able to find out, you know, if they have any anxiety, because you can act out, you know, their normal school day with toys.
And puppets.
Yes. Exactly. Kids respond so well to that. The last point I want to make is the security. When I brought my kids back to school, and I do live in New York City, the first day after this event, you know, the Monday after this event, the other day, I went in, and I have a 7-year-old and a 14-year-old. There was our headmaster and 2 security guards standing at the front door, and that triggered a lot of anxiety in me. I didn't have that kind of anxiety. It actually increased my anxiety, because it was such a reminder that I'm leaving my 7-year-olds in this school, and that 7-year-olds died. You know, so I mean, it was crazy. Instead of being a calming thing, it increased my anxiety, and I thought, well, maybe it's just me. But in talking to other parents, they felt the same way. So I like that you're talking about the security piece.
Mm-hmm. Pat, do you have any thoughts about these points?
No, I think you covered them really well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next slide then, about school. Another idea is to set out your child's clothes the night before. Now, I know, you know, a lot of people do that already, but I think that's really helpful so that there's not any kind of confusion in the morning. You might want to think about their breakfast or whatever also. You know, anything you can do to cut down on the confusion in the morning is a great thing. And then talk to them about what they'd like for lunch and add a special treat. Food is a big thing for kids, as you know, and giving them a special treat, you know, kind of gives them something to look forward to. And the last one I think is really important is to build on successes and times when your child's been courageous. You know, kids are courageous. I mean, when were you afraid to go to the first day of school? Do you remember, or do you remember how it was going into that class, or do you remember when you had to play in the school concert, or when you had to sing, or you can even talk to high school kids about times that they were courageous and build on those successes. So how do you want to comment on any of these?
Yeah, I like the idea of creating a really calm environment in the morning, like you said, getting everything ready, because everybody's more anxious anyway. And the more we can do that, maybe have calm music in the background. Definitely do not turn on the news. But the more that we can do that, the better. 'Cause sometimes the first shift, which is the morning shift with children, is the most stressful. And so that's a great idea. And the other piece is, I love the add a special treat with the lunch, or you can even write a little note or something on their napkin, or make a little face, or say I love you, and put it in their lunch. Put some stickers in there. Kids love all that stuff.
Oh, Heidi, your husband is great does he still decorate their lunch bags?
He does. Yes, he loves drawing little cartoon characters on the kids' lunches, my little one's lunch, and she loves it.
That's great.
And how about you, Pat? Have you got any thoughts about these?
I like the last one that you have here, build on successes and times when your child was courageous, because I think that they need to be reminded that they can be courageous when something happens, and I think that's a very good point.
And maybe we could also think about times when we were courageous, and you know, it's tough, and going back to times when you made it, and if I could do that, then I can get through this now.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the other thing I want to say, and I may have said this with the siblings that are living, I'm talking about this event, but that lost siblings that day, that you know, it wasn't their fault. There's nothing they could have done to prevent it, and there's nothing that they did wrong. Everybody did what they thought was the best thing at the time. All those kids were courageous. They did what they thought was the best at that time.
Absolutely.
Because there's sometimes a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of survival guilt to go around there.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. And I was just saying, and for all of us, there's survival guilt when we first have children die.
Yes, absolutely. That kind of segues into a question that I'm looking at, Heidi. And this question is, as a surviving sibling, my concern and thoughts are with the brothers and sisters who are going to deal with this all their lives. This tragedy reminds me of my losses, struggles, and how it never goes away. Any comments on the siblings who are left to deal with this all their lives? How can I or any other surviving sibling manage the re-energizance of the struggles they have been through?
Wow, my heart goes out to this person. I know, it's such a big deal to lose a sibling. I'm so glad that your voice is out there. So, you know, it just with what we've been saying, how, you know, I feel like our main role as a brother or sister that is still here is to keep the memories of our siblings alive. You know, my kids don't know Scott, my brother, their uncle, but they do know him. They can tell you all about him. And so I feel like we know things about our brothers and sisters that no one else knows. We've had experiences that our parents haven't had with them. So taking that and talking about them and keeping those memories alive, I think is a wonderful thing to do. And like I said, my heart goes out to you. It's a hard question.
Yeah.
Mom and Pat, do you guys want to weigh in at all? Because you've seen your you know, the children and what they're going through.
Well, I think it's a lifetime journey with your sibling. You never lose them. I mean, they're with you on your journey of life, and I think that, I don't know, Heidi, I'll say this because I don't know, but I think you feel like your brother cheers you on now.
Absolutely. He's my guiding light, and he is always with me, but I've got to tell you, initially, I wanted him here. And people would tell me, oh, Heidi, he's going to be your guiding light. And I'm like, I don't want a freaking guiding light. I want someone in the room that I can hold and hug and tease and bother. And so, you know, eventually down the road, that's all we have. So it's a beautiful thing. And like you said, the bond continues forever. He's always going to be my brother, no matter what.
And for people who didn't get along with their siblings, that's a tough one too, because there are a lot of issues that never got resolved. And Heidi, I love what you say. Isn't it Elizabeth DeVita Rayburn, whose brother was a boy in the bubble, that says, talk about her brother never doing anything wrong?
Yeah, she said Ted died 20 years ago, and she says Ted hasn't done anything wrong in over 20 years. He's perfect. You know,
That's
we have
cute.
to hear about the siblings, and when they die, they don't do anything wrong at that point. So, and the other thing I want to say about the ambivalent relationships, we fought with our siblings because we love them. If we didn't love them, we wouldn't invest any energy into them. And sometimes we don't know how close we are until they're gone. So.
Wow. Okay, do you have any more questions now, Pat, or should we move on to reach out?
Why don't we move on to reach out right now, and then we'll go back to some questions.
Good. Okay. So how do you want to take reach out?
Yes, there's so many ways that we can reach out so that we don't feel isolated and alone. If you have a lot of anxiety right now or a lot of depression around what's happened, I mean, that's normal. But one of the things I can't stress enough is for you to reach out, because that will really help. And there's so many ways to do that. I mean, Compassionate Friends is a fabulous way. Go on their Facebook page. Go into their different Facebook rooms. I mean, they have a Sound of the Siblings Compassionate Friends, which is a fabulous website for the siblings. Attend a meeting. Network with friends and attend a Compassionate Friends meeting in your local area. Attend a conference nationally. Just reach out to your online community. I mean, we've got Open to Hope here, and our community has forums, etc. Reach out to the internet community that you have, because you know what? Initially, when you first have a loss, it's hard to even leave the room. It's hard to even get dressed. You don't have to. Put your laptop on your lap, stay in bed, and reach out.
Absolutely. So that's really such an important part. We run a Compassionate Friends group here in the Palo Alto area. And I think it's just so great for people to know that maybe it's been years since your child died, but this Sandy Hook thing comes up, and you may need to reach out again and go back to your chapters and find people to sit down and talk with. You know, sometimes I used to feel like when I went, and it's been, I don't know, how many years ago, Heidi, 25 since Scott died, I will go to the meeting, and I help run the meeting, and I'm reaching out that way in the service too. And I used to feel a little bit like, oh, people are going to think I'm really not over it because I'm here. And I finally realized this is all about service. Who cares, you know, what people think? And to be able to see people at all different levels of grief, there is such hope in it, because you see people come in so sad, as I know many of you are out there, and you just see them move along in the process. And then you see them helping other people, and it's just a great thing, isn't it, Pat?
Oh, absolutely. There are times where people will tell their story in a Compassionate Friends meeting where they have never told it to anybody else, and they feel safe. And because they feel safe, they feel that they can then tell that story that they can't share anyplace else.
And Mom, I just want to say that you're a good role model. We need people that are further down the road to be part of Compassionate Friends, and we have people that are, because we need to to show people that are early on in their grief that there are, you know, you are in a different place 20 plus years later. And I think that's really important. I remember when Scott died, I needed to look at people that were further down the road and realize they were still standing, they were functioning, and they were not only surviving, but they eventually went on to find hope again. We need to see that early on. So the other thing I want to say is, you said something about getting over it. We don't ever get over the person, because we don't want to erase them from our lives, but the pain is what lessens over time. The person is always with us.
Absolutely, and our grief transforms, and it's a long ways down the road. I heard the Sandy Hook thing, some guy came on and talked about post-traumatic growth. These families will find, and I thought, this is way too early. For people out there, those are strange words. I mean, if you've had somebody die in the last year or two or three, it is tough times, and all of us here, our heart really goes out to you. And as far as reaching out, I wanted to go to the next one. I wanted to tell you that we put our holiday book on our website at opentohope.com. And we would have given it free on ebooks, but Amazon wouldn't let us. It's actually 99 cents, not 98. But you can go on to opentohope.com and download our book free. So I hope that if you want to hear 25 inspirational stories that's helping you through, we hope that you'll use that. And then I thought we could put this little quote next, and then I think we ought to move on and talk about more questions as we end the show. But Heidi, do you want to comment on the quote? I know you're a quote lover.
Oh, I love this quote, and it's funny because I have it in my office on a box, and a client just sent it to me, not even knowing that I had it on a refrigerator magnet.
And then I put it on the site.
Yeah, I know. That's so odd. Life isn't about, oh, it's about, actually it's just a one about. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what we're all doing here together is learning to dance in the rain because it is a lot of rain. So, Pat, are there more questions that we have before we close?
Oh, we do. Here's a question, and this one is, I'm listening to how other children have been affected. Unfortunately or not, I've noticed my son, who is 14, is more detached from the Connecticut situation and doesn't talk about it at all. I'm not sure if it's because of his personal loss. Do you think this is normal?
Absolutely. 14-year-old. When Scott died, my daughter was 14. I mean, they left to wear headphones. I remember the whole family slept in the same room, in our family room, and for, a few days. And I remember, because Scott died suddenly with his cousin in an automobile accident, and I remember the 14-year-old suddenly says, Ma, it says to everybody, I want to announce that if anybody cries, I will not sleep with them again. So, it's a hard time. It's a hard time. And for a boy, and I would suggest that if you want to connect with a 14-year-old teenager, that maybe, especially a boy, that you just try to do it through sports and whatever, and don't expect him to talk a lot about it. I would think it's normal. What do you think, Heidi?
Well, I'm laughing to myself because I have a 14-year-old boy. And, I've been working with children in grief for many, many years, so I had just the right things to say. I sat him down. I thought I was very profound. I knew exactly what to do, I thought. And he looks at me, and I told him what happened, and I said, do you have any questions? And he said, yes. Can I go play basketball now? That was his response, and he hasn't said anything.
Right.
And occasionally I weigh in with him, and I say, Alexander, if you need anything, I'm here. If you have any questions about what happened, I'm here. And I just want to let you know I'm not going to bother you about it, but I'm here. And he hasn't followed up on it. It is it's so normal for teenagers not to go to their parents and to either not talk as much about it or to talk with their peers about it, their
That's
friends.
what I was going to say. They may be talking to friends.
Yes, because he has talked a little bit to friends. I know that. So, yeah, very normal. And we have a book, Teen Grief Relief. If you ever need to know more information, and it is written we interviewed lots of teens, and it has a lot of good coping skills, strategies in there, et cetera, and it's for parents about teens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's on Amazon, Teen Grief Relief.
This one, Heidi, I'm going to direct to you, but you'll know where I'm going on this. There are not many grief support groups for siblings in my area, and just wondering where there are resources available for the children. I'm thinking about the national conferences. How about you, Heidi?
Yes, Pat, that's the best. Yes, our national conferences. We have such a great sibling program, and Pat puts it together with Tracy, and who's on our board, and has a lot of great groups and fun activities, because a lot of times the kids want to do things that are fun and for all ages, by the way, adults, children, etc. It's a wonderful place to come together.
And the other thing is these kids meet each other, and they follow each other through the year. They connect. And with the Sounds of Sibling Facebook page, I mean, they become friends for years.
Yeah, they do. It's a wonderful relationship that they have.
And it will be in Boston, so I think one of the things, it's difficult to get teenagers to go to group. And that's one of the things about it that I love that it's going to be in Boston, because, gosh, you can go to Boston. We'll do some fun things while we're there, and we can also go to the Compassionate Friends National Conference. So maybe, and you know what, you may have to say to them, would you do it for me? You really may have to go to that point. But I will tell you, if you can get them there, it's an amazing experience. But it isn't easy to get teens to group, is it, Heidi? Any group.
It's really not. And, what we try to do is we find the kids that are in the hotel room, and we try to go and, link them up with other teens so they can make friends. Because once they've made friends, they want to be involved. They want to do things. but it is hard initially. But for that sibling out there, I have no idea how old this person is, if it's a child or an adult. I will tell you, it is hard to find sibling groups, and it is hard to have our loss acknowledged and to feel validated. And I will tell you, it's interesting. I worked with 9/11 for 10 years, and I've said this before, but I would have thought that a national tragedy like that would have just brought in services for everybody. And I worked for the fire department, and for 4 years, the siblings got no services. Everybody got services but the siblings. And I was not allowed to work with them because we didn't have funding, which just killed me. But on year 4, I finally got to work with them, and they were very angry because there is not enough out there for siblings. And that's why I love that Compassionate Friends acknowledges and recognizes and validates that a sibling loss is extremely difficult, and they're there for us.
And the chapters do have room for sibling groups. The thing is, getting them organized. Some of the chapters have stronger sibling groups than others, and trying to organize them, getting a sibling who can run them, usually an older sibling, will be part of the larger Compassionate Friends group. Pat can speak to this more than I. But yes, people are looking for sibling groups. It's a little hard to trap, I hate to say, but to trap siblings into coming into those groups to get them to do it, because again, a 14-year-old may not want to sit and talk about it. And they have obligations. As adults, we can say, okay, I'm carving out Monday night. Well, you know what? Teens have got homework. They've got sports that they have to do. They are very, very busy people. And as my pediatrician told me about my 14-year-old, he said, you got to realize that these kids are also run by hormones. And so they have things that they have to do. They have energy that they, have to use in sports, and they have things going on that adults are able to plan and a little bit more than kids are. Pat, did you want to say something about the teens and Compassionate Friends or groups?
Yeah, it is difficult to start teen groups within the chapters, like you said. They don't do real well in the group situation, but at the national conferences, they are just dynamite. They really do bond very, very well at that time. But getting them to a group situation or in a group setting is difficult, isn't it, Heidi?
It really is, and I'm just thinking about all the close friends we eventually make. If you can get them just to go once, and once you've gone 3 times, usually kids are really hooked in, but this is how powerful this is. I met a kid in Compassionate Friends many years ago, and I asked him last year if he would come to Columbia University where I teach and talk to my graduate students about losing a sibling. And he did do that, and he loved it so much that he decided to apply to Columbia. Now, I met him at Compassionate Friends. I wrote his letter of recommend, and he is now a student there.
Oh, that's great. That's just wonderful.
That sounds like a great story to end this webinar on. I hate it. We're out of time.
Yeah, we are. You guys have been great. Thank you for doing this on such short notice, and thank you everyone for coming. Our webinars are recorded and posted on the Compassionate Friends website, www.compassionatefriends.org. Beginning tomorrow, December 20th, a tribute book will be on the Compassionate Friends website for all those to leave a message to the families in town of Newtown. When you visit the Compassionate Friends website, you'll also find a wealth of grief-related information, a local chapter, and also links to our Facebook and our Twitter pages. Good night, Gloria and Heidi. Good night, everyone, and have a gentle holiday, and be well.
Good
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.